Next, we have Misty Copeland, who's going to introduce us to some special guests.
Yes, this is super exciting. Again, I couldn't be more proud to represent dance, especially classical ballet, being on this council, and just how much it's just a vital part, I think, of us as human beings to be able to move and to do it with something that brings us joy, and just how much it affects you throughout your life. Dancers are some of the best students and go on to have extremely successful careers once they finish their dance career, if they don't even go on to be professionals, because I think it has a combination of understanding your body and nutrition and moving, and it gets you to understand the structure of discipline, and it goes a long way. With that said, I couldn't be more excited to speak about the ARC, which is an incredible. There they are. I'm so excited to see them. So I must share my experience with them. They had me here not too long ago, hosted me for a book event. And I'm, as an African-American woman in the ballet world, I understand that we are really lacking in diversity when it comes to ballet. So when I was brought to the ARC, I was driven into this parking lot and I saw this amazing building. And to know that it was in probably one of the worst neighborhoods in the DC area, and to see this community come together, and that it was surrounded and through classical ballet. Tears streamed down my face like, oh my gosh, this is my mission. This is what I worked so hard for, to diversify ballet. And it was just incredible to walk into that building and see the diversity there. So, the Washington Ballet at the ARC Performance Ensemble is an auditioned group of dancers that perform through the greater DC community. They are made up of young men and women and highlights the diverse talent of the Washington Ballet Southeast campus, with performances at such prestigious venues as the White House. Under the direction of Katrina Taves, today they will perform two pieces. The first is from Act One, Giselle, which is probably one of my favorite ballets. The second will be Party Time, an African modern choreography that celebrates the joy and exuberance of a community dancing together. Please join me in welcoming the Washington Ballet's The ARC Performance Ensemble.
Well, that was great. That was a great endurance workout. I'm like breathing hard just watching you guys. You're amazing. And I must say that I was proud to see some gymnastics in there. That was exciting. Great job. Let's give them another round of applause. Well, now I have the pleasure of introducing Tom Ferry, who will be moderating the Sports for All Roundtable, the first of 3 group discussions that we're going to have today. Tom Ferry leads the Sports and Society program at the Aspen Institute and is responsible for overseeing the Project Play report, which aims to reimagine youth sports in America. Tom is an Emmy award-winning journalist for ESPN and author of the book Game On, the all-American race to make champions of our children. As a journalist, he reports, and his reports have appeared on ESPN's Outside the Lines, SportsCenter, E60, ABC World News Tonight, and Good Morning America, as well as the Seattle Times, Business Week, and the Washington Post. He is a contributing writer at ESPN the magazine and ESPN.com, and his written work has earned top national honors from organizations including the Women's Sports Foundation and the Society of Professional Journalists. Please help me welcome Tom Ferry.
Yeah, thanks, Dominique. You know what, after that last show here, I think we ought to change this to Dance for All instead of Sport for All.
That's a good idea. That's great.
There's an awful lot of exercise happening there.
It was.
Anyway, it's a great pleasure to be. I mean, it's really such an honor to be with you and Shelley, who's been a huge champion of our program, been there since we started this thing a couple of years ago. But just to give you a little more background, as you said, I wrote a book a few years ago that tried to take measure of the landscape of youth sports in America and explain how we became the world's sports superpower, but also had the world's worst obesity crises, or one of the worst. And so it took a lot of work, and I went around the country, and I talked to, I did the lecture tour, and at the end of every conversation with folks, people are like, well, that's great, thank you for telling us how we got here, but now what do we do about it? How do we make sport accessible to all and make sure that kids are receiving, true health and fitness benefits that last for a lifetime? So, the Aspen Institute was a terrific venue to get all of these folks together, the thought leaders, organizational leaders, to begin to shape the conversation, identify opportunities for people to align behind, and then build this model of sport for all, play for life. So after 8 or 9 roundtables and the convening of more than 300 leaders, in summits, Allison Felix is with us here. She was at the ESPN town hall with President Clinton and Kobe Bryant in February, and Jane was with us at the tech roundtable at Google, where we tried to surface ideas on how tech can be used to get and keep more kids active in sports. And who else? Michelle, of course, who was here at the launch summit and has been an inspiration throughout. So, and Shelley, who's been to a couple things as well. We have some ideas to explore, and in January we're going to produce a report. It's essentially a proposal for a national strategic plan on how all stakeholders from sport, health, philanthropy, business innovation can plug into a plan that has 8 or so real opportunities to build this model of sport for all, play for life. Because although youth sports in this country seems to be bigger and better than ever before, there's still a lot of kids who are left behind. Only 4 out of 10 kids in America between the ages of 6 and 12 play team sports on a regular basis. And that number is down from 44.5% just 5 years ago. So it's trending the wrong way. We do know that adolescents who play sports are far more likely to be active into their adult years than adolescents who do not play sports. And of course, we all know that kids of this generation might live not as long as their parents for the first time either. So there's a real issue we need to wrestle with here. So what I'd like to do in this roundtable is move the conversation around and talk about some of these big opportunities that we have surfaced through our convening of leaders, and engage you on your thoughts on why they might be valuable from their perspective. So first, let me go to you, Anthony. One of the ideas is, in youth sports, it's all drawn up by parents. It's dads and moms sitting on the local Little League board or the soccer board, drawing up competition structures and trying to figure out, what's going to engage kids. We end up having high attrition rates. No one ever brings the voice of kids into the conversation and says, how do you make sports a quality experience for you? What do you want? What do you need? I'm interested in getting your thought on how important is it to bring that kid voice into the decision-making structure around youth sports?
I think it's extremely important because it doesn't matter what you do if the kid's not engaged, if they're not going to be the front runner, the one pushing it, then you're not going to get anything out of it. So from what I've seen just on my short visits to the schools already, they just enjoy just those high energy things, just mainly the adults being active as well. They like to see the adults in there because then they have fun and like, oh, this is cool, this is fun, this is exciting. So, for me, I think it's just something that we can engage in with the kids, not just us, the adults sitting on the sidelines, just watching, telling them what to do, but when we're actively out there with them and participating, then it draws the youth in more and it excites them. So,
one of the underserved populations in youth sports are kids with physical disabilities, and otherwise, a lot of parents, especially the people who are drawing up local recreation options, might struggle in figuring out how to engage those kids. Do you have any advice along those lines?
Well, I know growing up for me, the biggest thing my mom, she did for me, I was born missing my leg, and, she always focused on what I could do, so she'd always just take the time to draw up those plans, almost like a puzzle. She'd try to figure out what I could do, and then she'd bring that to me. Say, "Hey, let's try this." As far as being active, I know when I was 5 years old, she taught me how to ride a bike, and she came to me with a plan. She made a special little pedal for me to put my foot in, and helped me to hold my balance up. And so I think for the individuals, for the kids who maybe are facing those disabilities, I think the best thing would be to go to their parents and say, hey, what are they capable of, and how can we structure this to focus on what they can do, not what they can't do. And for me, that really helped boost my self-confidence as a kid. Just knowing, these are the things I can do, and so I started looking at things a different way. I started to just focus on, well, how can I do these things? What can I do next? I want to keep moving. I want to keep accomplishing certain things. So it just helps boost their confidence outside of just being active, just in this classroom and other things. So,
another challenge we have in the youth sports space is that is so competition focused, so winning focused, right? We put kids in uniforms at 3, and then we create the travel teams at 6 and 7, and we sort the weak from the strong, and we send some messages to kids that you're really not part of the structure. And coaches get the message that their job is to win games. One of the real opportunities that's been presented through Project Play that the U.S. Olympic Committee has already embraced and asked each one of its 48 national sport governing bodies to endorse, and they have, is this idea of development first, right? Putting the child at the center and saying, okay, how do we develop each individual child based upon what is age appropriate, what is developmentally appropriate? So, Allison, you're an elite athlete, right? But you had an interesting pathway to Olympic gold. How important do you think it is to make youth sports age and developmentally appropriate?
I think it's extremely important. The research shows that there has to be a positive experience with play at an early age, and if that's not there, it's not the child is not going to enjoy it, and they're not going to continue on. And I think that the culture right now is so driven by, at age 3, we have to have them, what sport are they going to play? What's the plan? Where can we send them? And have it all figured out. And for me, like you said, I had not a traditional, experience as an Olympic athlete, had a very normal childhood upbringing, and I was just involved in community activities, playing in my neighborhood, and I was in kind of a little bit of everything, and I didn't really find my sport until a later age in high school, and it still worked out for me, and I think it was because I was exposed to so much. I had a lot of variety, and I got to figure out, what was fun for me. And I think that's okay. I think that it doesn't even have to be about sport. It has to be about exercising with family and friends and just the lifestyle. It's about learning that lifestyle at a young age so that children can continue on as they're growing up and also pass it on to the next generation. And so I think it's definitely okay to not know at a very young age which direction you're going to go to. And it's about those positive early experiences.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Let me ask you, Curtis. Another opportunity that has surfaced is the idea of training all coaches, right? So we held a roundtable in Colorado Springs, got the top coaching leaders together and said, okay, if there's 6.5 million coaches of kids 14 and under in this country, most of them are not trained in a lot of the key competencies. What are the most important ones if you're going to engage kids? And what emerged was, training in general philosophy. What's the big picture here? What are we trying to do with kids, right? Is it to win the game on Friday, or is it develop kids who are going to be active for life? And how do you communicate with kids? The other one would be safety, emotional, physical forms of safety. And the third would be skills and tactics, right? Because if a coach can't teach a kid how to kick a ball the proper way, or otherwise they're not going to get better and they're not going to feel the positive benefits from improving within the sport. So, this is a nation that has not prioritized the training of coaches, unlike in Europe and Australia and other places. So, Curtis, how important do you think it is that coaches be trained in the key competencies to work with kids?
Well, I think it's very important because one thing I've learned a lot by being a coach at Gallaudet University is that you want to develop a strong environment where kids can learn not only about the skills or the field, but also about life lessons. And it's not about witty, but it's about developing their confidence and be able to teach them the right skill on the field. And now that's all about team bonding, be able to work together, work with your teammates, communication. And the one thing I've learned all along is that I know a lot of the coaches, they focus more about winning. What they should be focused more about developing each person, skill, technique, and helping them build their self-confidence, and help teach them how to learn to communicate, work together as a team. And I know that a lot of the coaches are not really knowledgeable in certain areas, so that's something we have to maybe have them take a course, classes where we can teach them the basic training of how to teach the players the right skill, how to develop a comfortable environment where the kids will be more receptive to the coaches, wanting to learn, wanting to have fun. I know that a lot of the coaches have been so hard on their players, but so.
Yeah, well, thanks. And Michelle, you obviously have had, I imagine you've had a good coach or two along the way. When you were a kid, what type of coach really mattered the most to you? What type of skills did they bring and that helped you bring out the best in you?
Well, Tom, I have had many coaches, as you mentioned, choreographers, trainers, people who helped me along the way. And I think coaches that have been strong and inspiring, focused on detail, but always focused on how to best improve you, as opposed to let's look at the competition and compare you and others. And I think in a sport like figure skating, where they emphasize a lot on rivalry as opposed to doing your best. I am very competitive in nature, but I never compared myself with anybody else. And I think that surprises a lot of people because they see it on TV and it's always like this person against this Russian skater. And to me, it was just doing my very best. And I think the coaches that I had over the years have always been trying to improve me as opposed to being like, how are you going to be the best? How are you going to be number one?
That's fascinating, right? Because what you're doing is you're redefining competition as opposed to with other people, with yourself. I mean, do you see a real opportunity there if we begin to help kids compete with themselves as opposed to this zero-sum game of winner loser?
Yeah, I think in society there is that zero-sum game, and I think that it saddens me because I think there's too much emphasis on being number one as opposed to participation. I'm on the board of Special Olympics International, and one of the things that we encourage is participation for all. We have launched Project Unify across schools. It's the idea of people with and without intellectual disabilities playing on the same team. You know, the idea of if you're on the same team, if you're working together, it brings about change and social inclusion. But there are just natural benefits of participation, like teamwork. It's about goal setting. It's about learning how to, you know, take a fall once in a while, and sometimes taking a spill on the ice in front of thousands of people, but learning to pick yourself back up. And those are the things that we have all learned through participating in sports, and things that translate easily off the field, off the ice, out of the basketball court, or wherever it may be. Things that, you know, you will succeed in life that way.
You know, Jane, you and I are both from South Florida here, which is known as a sports mecca itself, but we also know there are a lot of kids who from very poor homes, and you work with those kids. If you look at the kids who are left behind in sports, statistically, it's often the low-income kid. You know, soccer is the game of low-income kids around the world, but here in the U.S., it's the game of the upper middle class, because, you know, to get on that road to a college scholarship, you got to get with the premier team and the private coaching and so on and so forth. A lot of kids are left behind by this travel team culture. Not that the travel team culture is all bad, but how important is it, do you think, to revitalize local leagues? Right? Remember when we were kids? You know, in-town leagues, you're playing with your friends. It's affordable. It's not just available to the best athletes. Do you see an opportunity there? And if so, how much of a priority should that be?
Absolutely. I think children, first of all, we get to teach them a plethora of activities in sport through physical education in the schools. So we can find the diamonds in the rough and encourage them to participate in sport. But at the local community, we need to make equitable access. We need to, even in the schools, do away with the pay to play, because we're developing a culture that those that only can afford to be involved in sport can be involved in sport. So you're right, we need to cut through those socioeconomic factors that are debilitating youth going into more sport, and we need to have more parks, leagues, and make it affordable for every child. And that's a given, that it has to happen.
You know, one of the ideas that emerged, I was watching the Little League World Series like a lot of us were. Remember Moni Davis, right? 13-year-old girl from urban Philly mowing down the best boy hitters in the country. And it occurred to me that, okay, why exactly do we separate girls and boys at age 6 and 7 and segregate them? And then ultimately a lot of these in-town rec leagues wither and die when kids are in 5th and 6th grade because there just aren't enough boys or enough girls to sustain them. Physically, kids don't grow. Before puberty, boys and girls are pretty much the same. Is there an argument to be made that let's create more co-ed type teams up through age 12 or so?
You know, we want children to perform where they're comfortable. It has to be age appropriate, it has to be developmentally appropriate, and not to just put them together based on age, but really based on, when we get to sport, based on ability. And we don't want anybody to fail either. So we do want to have open access. But, you know, we're doing something now with flag football rolled out by the NFL, with Gen Youth, Fuel Up to Play 60, where we're actually putting flag football in the schools, expanding what we have. But in Miami, we're moving it a step further, and we're adding flag football as a girls' varsity sport. So we're encouraging more girls to participate in what's normally non-traditional sports, as well as others. And again, thanks to one of your roundtables, this Friday we actually have a meeting with Chris Snyder and Paul Ackerman that we're rolling out a new Paralympic program through the schools. So when we talk about sport for all, we want to make sure that students with disabilities have the opportunity to also progress through their sporting field as well.
Got it. You know, Jason, I want to turn to you. We, you know, a lot of us we all know the story of Tiger Woods. A kid and a father who were very much focused on one sport growing up, and a lot of folks have thought that, okay, then maybe that's the model on how you create an elite athlete. But, you know, there's research that the U.S. Olympic Committee has done at our request, looking at the pathway of Olympians, and they've actually found that, you know, a great majority of Olympians have a multi-sport pathway all the way into high school. I'm curious to know what your you ended up in the NBA. You ended up playing one sport, but did you play multiple sports as a kid? And if so, for how long? And what was the value of that?
Yeah, I have a twin brother, and we played a lot of different sports growing up. Now, our teams were usually pretty good because there's two of us. But yeah, we played tennis, golf, soccer, baseball, football, every sport growing up until around the eighth, ninth grade. That's when we focused in on basketball because that was going to be our best shot to get a Division I scholarship and alleviate a financial burden on our parents. But up until that point, I really gained an appreciation and love until this day. You know, as my basketball career starts to wind down, now my tennis career is ramping back up. I'm in 3 different tennis leagues, and I play in one league where the next youngest individual is probably 65. So we're like in the semi-retired league. But the great thing about tennis, I mean, it gets you outside, it gets you moving, keeps you active, and you know, you can still hit the ball if the ball's coming to you, and it's a lot of fun. So I really think that appreciation for different sports, and especially team sports, the values that you learn, having the common goal, sacrificing for the team. Shelly even talks about that now. She refers to this council as a team, and we have so many great individual pieces, but we're all moving to the one goal of the lifestyle, healthy lifestyle for all Americans. So yeah, learned appreciation, definitely important.
Hey, Tom, I'm sorry, Tom. I know you're trying to get to some other questions, but I'd really be interested in, and I know some of your histories, but did most of you grow up playing multiple sports? I know, Caitlin, I think you said you did as well and ended up in ice hockey.
Yeah, I did. I actually played a year of Division I lacrosse in college as well, so I wasn't willing to give it up so soon. But yeah, just to echo what people have been saying, I mean, I think it's so important to have opportunity and access. And I love, Jane, I love that idea of flag football for a girls' varsity sport because I think there are a lot of misconceptions. Certainly, I grew up playing on all boys teams, and that was fantastic. That was great for me. But one size fits all is not really what we're going for here. It's got to be, you know, something that can fit everyone when given the right opportunities. So I think that's a fantastic idea just developmentally. And to echo what Curtis said, that's so right on for me because being an athlete, especially a team sport athlete, the most important lessons I learned were not about shooting the puck or stick handling or skating. They were absolutely about, you know, how I could challenge myself and the best ways to recover from defeat, the kind of dignity that I would carry regardless of the outcome of the game. And I think those are some of the things that coaches, parents tend to lose sight of, especially in this rat race for scholarships and those kind of opportunities. So I love the conversations that we've been having about getting communities and parents involved, educating coaches, and making sure that those values are still very much pushing the ways in which we adapt to think about sports and fitness in coming generations.
And Cornell, I think one of the concepts we're developing within our program is about physical literacy. We're trying to define it for the U.S. It's a movement that is started in Canada and England and a couple other countries. We're trying to come up with a definition here, and then a set of asks for different sectors. It goes beyond sports, right? But what role do you see the playing of multiple sports? What role does that have in developing physical literacy? Meaning, roughly speaking, the proficiency to move within multiple environments and transfer those skills into, well, any number of activities as you get older.
Well, I think playing in multiple sports is fabulous for the overall fitness in terms of your development, because when you do only one thing, you kind of train the body in like one dimension. And so it becomes like overtrained in that area. So the multiple thing really allows the body to develop like it was meant to kind of work in a natural movement pattern. So it's so important to do different things. And so one, you don't overtrain, but two, then you're able to be more balanced and so just in an overall training perspective, it just really trains the body so much better from that perspective. But I was thinking about when you're talking about how do we get more children involved, And we all talked about, we know the over-competition kind of model has not served us well because our numbers are going down. And somehow we have to find a way to be inclusive in a way that if you participate, you win. You're just a winner because you begin. And somehow we have to have that model. I mean, development is so important, but just participation, you know, somehow we have to find a way to just say, just being in the sport makes you a winner. And it's one of the things we talk about, whether the coaches are, you know, the coaches are so driven to win, win, win. And one of the reasons I think kids step away if they don't feel like they can add to the winning process of that, as opposed to the whole winning process is just to be moving and just to be involved. And so somehow I think we need to look at that model. And you know, I think personally that would help greatly in terms of getting more kids active.
That's great. So, you know, Caitlin, I'm curious to know, how do we bring the cost down on sports? I mean, you played ice hockey, which is extremely expensive, and therefore a very small segment of the population pays for it. And yet, you know, some of the beauty of hockey, or at least the history of it, the creativity flows from pond hockey, which costs absolutely zero. So how do we bring back maybe more of a culture of casual play, where kids are just out there on their own? They're not expensive private coaches. Can we do this? I mean, can we bring back casual play? And if so, how do we do that?
Well, there have been a lot of great discussions so far about this issue, and I think a lot of great ideas have come from Jane and others who have suggested creating more time for kids during the day to have a safe space in which they can participate and play. That's hugely important. A lot of kids struggle with not having the type of environment that is conducive to, you know, community activities, and that's something that's incredibly important. Hockey is a very expensive game, but you're correct that it did start on the pond. There's still opportunities out there, but there have to be parents, teachers, members of the community who are willing to oversee some of this, because the world has changed a little bit. We need to make sure those safe spaces are available for kids. The second thing I would say is, I think we need to think outside the box increasingly and look at alternative activities. It's not just about sports to be competing on a team. It's about sports and participation, as Cornell just mentioned, to get kids active and to be participating in a healthy lifestyle, their lifestyle, that they're going to own for the rest of their lives. I was talking with Misty earlier, and I said, you know, I think I really missed my calling with dance. It's probably not true. But the whole notion that now we are including dance as part of a discussion on what it means to be athletic is crucial in my mind, in talking about how we move forward. Different kinds of activities that weren't necessarily historically mainstream sports, they've got to be in that conversation, because like I said, it's not one size fits all. So I think that conversation keeps developing, and there will be more opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So Mark, you've done some work with the Army in terms of basic training and injury prevention. I'd be curious to get your perspective. I mean, one of the barriers to participation increasingly in youth sports are the fears that parents have that their child might get concussed. Right? We've seen what's happening in football. We've seen what's happening in hockey, some of these collision sports, and parents are now starting to wonder, okay, is this really going to promote health with my child if they're banging heads at 6, 8, 10, 12 years old? Any lessons learned from your experience?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tom. And what we learned is, whereas concussions may be the story du jour, and it's what everyone is focused on, it's a relatively small percentage of the athletes. What's more important, that if you don't play, if you don't activate, if you don't have passion for some type of activity, there are so many other things that will come up later on in life. And what we're seeing and what we saw in the Army was just the results of poor activity and poor nutrition at a younger age in terms of bone growth, even poor nutrition, teeth decay, all the things that are associated with an active and nutritious body have begun to fall away over the last 30 years. So whereas concussions may be the most advertised injuries, I think what we saw in the military were an unbelievable spike, and Misty and Kate and I were talking about it this morning, an unbelievable spike in our young people of having stress fractures throughout critical parts of their body, knee, hip, ankles. And I think unless we address more play, more activity, more informal, less standard play, we're going to see, as you started your conversation with, more and more problems with mortality at a younger age. And if we don't have mortality, we're going to have multiple types of injury in younger age adults. The kind of people Jason was talking about, the young 65-year-old who's playing tennis. In a couple of years, that individual is not going to be able to get out on the tennis court because of things that have happened in a younger age.
So this issue, this broader issue that we're talking about here, how critical is it to address it and solve it and make sport more accessible for the sake of national security and military
Yeah,
recruitment?
well, we stated this, that this is actually not just an athletic or a health concern, this is a national security concern. And, you know, everyone's going to say, oh, the soldiers up here is talking about future recruitment. That's not the case. I mean, less than 1% of our population go into the military forces today. That's not the issue. It's the issue of being able to be motivated to do the things you love. I mean, this old general had tears in his eyes watching these dancers up here, because you could look at their faces and see the complete joy in some of the faces, the motivation for just being happy, whereas others, you could see their face were contorted in the, I gotta get this right. You know, it's the different levels of motivation that Michelle was talking about, and why do people do the things they want to do. We have to open up and allow others to open up the ability to have play, to have fun. If you want to have competition, if you want to have competition at a high level, all those things are good. But it's across the board. It's the spectrum. It's just not the high-level elite athlete that we should be concerned about.
You know, Dominique, obviously you're in gymnastics, which is a terrific sport, but there aren't always gyms nearby, and it does cost a lot of money. So I want to ask you about the infrastructure issue here. You know, in the last Summer Olympics, we had a certain gold medalist who had to fly all the way to, or had to move to Iowa to be developed. Now that's an elite athlete. That's not the goal of Project Play, is to create more of those opportunities necessarily. Although I think it's probably supportive of you know, helping elite sports, but local kids, connecting them to nearby parks and athletic facilities where they can pursue a sport that they might enjoy or perhaps even be good at. What's the status? I mean, how well are we doing in that space right now, and how important is it to provide that type of infrastructure?
Well, there's a great deal of boys and girls clubs that offer an array of different activities. Also the Y I would recommend. But if someone really is pursuing an Olympic dream, as Gabby Douglas was doing, her best bet was to go find that facility. But like you said earlier, the majority of kids are not going to be Olympic athletes or possibly professional athletes. And so I think that's where our community centers need to be taken advantage of a lot more. And also, as we've always talked about, the importance of getting physical education back into the school system, where kids can get those 60 minutes of physical activity each and every day, where it's fun, there's a lot of play. But I also, I am a strong advocate of pushing our kids and not thinking that participation is enough, because my biggest thing is, you know, when you walk as an adult, when you walk in for an interview, showing up is not enough. You have to be prepared. You have to have certain characteristics that are desirable, that's going to make you employable to that employee. And so my whole thing is, yes, I think we got to get our kids through those doors and we got to get them participating, but we have to, my coach would always say, light a flame under them to get that passion, so that they'll actually want to reach their full potential. They'll want to give it 110%, and maybe not focus on comparing themselves to the other figure skaters or the other people around them, but looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, I got to try harder, I got to do better, I can do more. And I think, like I said, the Y, the schools, and also the Boys and Girls Clubs might be an environment where kids can at least get those first steps.
How much more can we do? You know, Arnie Duncan has talked about there's all this school space. and communities don't always have access to them. So maybe we need to create more shared use agreements. You have any thought on the importance of schools and communities working together collaboratively, to provide spaces?
I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, I think right now they maybe, I don't know if it's any budget concerns or teams working together, but I think it would be wise to get rec centers to work with schools and boys and girls clubs and the Ys, because I've spoken to a number of physical education teachers at local DC schools that say that they don't even have gyms. That they've used auditoriums as their PE, their space for PE. And so, that's a disadvantage to our youth. And so if there's a local rec center that's right down the street, a Boys and Girls Club or a Y that has that space for our kids to enjoy, then I think it would be wise for them to team up.
How do we get, how do we enlarge, this can go to anybody here, how do we grow the set of leaders and sectors and stakeholders that care about this issue? We'll understand that a kid in DC who doesn't have a local place to run track and they got to run around the halls or whatever it is ultimately going to be probably a drag on the healthcare system, which half of the costs are picked up by the public. How do we crack that nut? Anybody have any thought on it?
I think the forum we had yesterday with a bunch of school superintendents who all are going through the constraints of reduced budgets, lack of time, more kids, insurance, all the things that are associated with reducing the amount of physical activity in school is the same type of forum. And I think Shelley and the team is trying to do that in the same way for activity. It's got to be, don't wring your, somebody smart once told me you can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time. This is the roll up your sleeve of finding ways to do things that don't cost money, that don't have interference, and there's smart ideas out there. And in fact, a lot of those smart ideas would come from the kids if we let them roll with it. So I think just looking outside the boundaries of fixed sport to expand in other activities and to make sure it's fun and it touches the motivation.
Well, I think even something as simple as hiking. My husband is a school teacher, and just the other day they went to the Great Falls area and they hiked Billy Goat A. And that's a local trail that's a great workout. If any of you all have hiked the boulders in that area, it's a great workout, and he had a good 60 or so boys sweating, having a great time, and it was fun, and it was also very productive.
Robert, you're an expert in communications and getting people to think about these topics, society more broadly. Do you have any advice on how to grow the set of people who care about this issue and understand the value of getting all kids 12 and under active through sports?
Well, my perspective on this is as a college athlete and also as a youth coach. So I've been around this all my life too. I think that one of the things that was mentioned, but I'd like to put a spotlight on, is our parents and their role. And in my experience, there are many parents who really aren't familiar with what it is to have that perspective of an athlete, particularly a young athlete, who wants to have fun and wants to be motivated and play with their kids, play with their friends. We have a rule in our town where if you play on the travel team, you must play in the rec league with everybody else. And it's terrific because at that point, there really are no boundaries between those kids. It's the closest they get these days to playing a pickup game. The way we used to go down to the playground. They don't do that anymore. They're overscheduled. They don't have time to do that. And I think that parents can be such a positive role model, obviously. But unfortunately, they can be a negative too. And they can impose this pressure. And for rational reasons, they want to get a scholarship, to their kid to get a scholarship to college and what have you. But there's undue pressure put on those kids. And a lot of it is a turnoff. We've all seen it. We've all seen those kids who get turned off. And we've all seen those kids who maybe aren't so good at 8 or 9. And when they're 12 and 13 and 14, they blossom. And I fear of all those 12-year-olds who quit when they were 8 and they didn't have an opportunity to play. So, I think some of the extraordinary athletes around this table and others could be a real role model through education and communicate to parents and really educate them about what it is to train or to be a parent of an athlete, whether that's an elite athlete, God willing, or whether that's just a kid who wants to have fun.
Finally, Shelley, everything we've talked about here today, we've had a number of different themes and areas of opportunity. The larger framework is simply reimagining youth sports in America to serve the interests of all kids in all communities. It's big, it's hairy, it's audacious, it's but how important do you see it that we, meaning all stakeholders, figure this out?
Yeah, and you said it earlier, Tom. I mean, we've been there at the get-go because sports is one of our pillars. It's in our name, and we've done quite a bit on the area of fitness. We've delved into nutrition, both from an obesity standpoint as well as a hunger standpoint, et cetera. But specifically, sports is an area where I think that we can dive into deeper. That's why we wanted this roundtable to take place, to really get your opinion on, is that a space we should go? And certainly we've engaged some of you, been able to engage some of you in some of those roundtables. So I'm going to, and by the way, just so I don't forget, I know Risa Levizo-Mori, council member, CEO of Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, is a great supporter of Project Play. She's in Chicago today, actually speaking to the Sports and Fitness Industry Association. And so she believes that, we have to be together, and that public health and sports, there's a connection there. So it all weaves together. And this whole notion that active kids do better, and whether they're engaged in sports endeavors or physical activity of some, in some degree, that active kids do better. They do better not only from their health, but their behavior, their sense of team, their, as you said, the dignity, being able to pick themselves up, resilience. Active kids do better in life. And that has been our mantra for Let's Move Active Schools. Many of us are involved with the Design to Move initiative, which has over 70 organizations from around the world participating. And Allison mentioned earlier and represents Nike as part of that, of the Design to Move partnership, that it's about creating those early childhood opportunities to be active, and it's creating the physical space, creating opportunities for kids and people to be active every day. Those are the two things that they're, that we're collectively laser focused on: early positive experiences and opportunities to be active every day. So to the extent that we can reimagine youth sports in America and make it a place where kids are safe, they feel valued, that we're instilling the opportunities to not only be physically healthier, but mentally and emotionally healthier and happier, and can grow up to be vivacious, productive adults in whatever endeavors we engage in. I would just encourage us as a council to continue to stay involved, and I will look to our council members to give me direction and our staff direction on, hey, we absolutely want to be in this space, and we need to continue to move forward.
Well, thanks, Shelley. I think, we hope our work makes a contribution to the overall conversation. The Aspen Institute can't do this. We're just here to help convene people, figure out a plan that everybody can plug into. Because there's no lack of money in youth sports, there's no lack of interest in youth sports, it's all kind of working at cross purposes. So this is an opportunity to get the butterflies moving in the same direction, really. So the report will be out in January. If you want a copy of it, come to go to the aspenprojectplay.org website, sign up for our newsletter. You'll find out about upcoming events. And then on February 25th at the museum, we'll have an all-day summit. It'll be an activation summit. People have had the report for a month. It'll be like, okay, Who's going to act on what here? Who's going to make this real? It's a terrific opportunity. Would encourage all of you to engage.
Tom?
And
Shelley?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, may I just add a point? I think would be remiss not to talk about the issue that's been so captivating in the last week or so with the Ray Rice video. And I think that we've seen the horrific video, but we all know the fact that it's not just limited to professional sports. We've seen just recently the incident at Florida State. We've read recently over the summer about the incident at Hobart College. We remember the Steubenville, Ohio situation with that occurred there. And we're talking about the male culture of sports, and particularly those sports like I played in college football, but others, that create a culture that can be very negative, obviously, towards girls and women. And I think we all know it, that it exists, and it requires leadership. There's some terrific people out there, nonprofits, coaches, academics. I think our science group may have something to add to this conversation. But in order to model good behavior, it's got to begin early. And we've got to get to some of those young boys in teams and explain to them that that's obviously not the right way to behave. So I'd urge us to put that on our agenda and on the collaborative agenda that we're working with you.
I wonder if co-ed teams, co-ed teams might help in there. If you're playing with girls and you're seeing them as equals, and you're maybe there's a real opportunity there.
I just think that's so essential. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the question that I wanted to ask when we talked about having those teams and developing them together. I mean, there have been some people have looked at this, but I think we need to look at it more in depth to find out the value that we really get from boys and girls playing together at those young ages. Because we found when boys and girls are on the same team, boys begin to respect girls in a different way, because then they begin to see them as equal. And when we talk about this problem that we're having in our overall society, so then we have a huge issue. And if we can use sport and we can use play to help to change the way that boys look at girls and girls look at boys and the way they relate to each other, that's something that we can't walk away from. So I think that's as key as everything else that we talk about in terms of the benefits that we get from this healthy life. I mean, we're talking about an overall healthy life. I mean, so it's just so essential that boys begin, when we look at the whole Moni Davis thing, and of course that's kind of an exception, but all of those boys valued her differently because she played with them and she played as well as them. And so many girls can do that. And I understand that it changes at some level, but because before puberty, that there's so much more equal that it begins to then teach them to deal with each other as equals. And we really need to do, I think, more look at that more and to see what that can do in terms of our overall society. So I just think that's essential.
And this discussion is so timely because of our partnership with the Office on Women's Health that I just mentioned. And so they've graciously agreed to fund a 2-year project, and we're framing that up right now. And so with your permission, we'll be happy, and we'll work with our science board and others to really kind of hone in on some of those issues that you've just mentioned. Does that sound like the right thing to do? Excellent.
All good for me. So thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Dominique. Thank you to the entire council. And again, if you would like any more information or dial into what we're doing here, check us out on Twitter and on the website.
Great. Well, thank you, Tom, and we look forward to the release of Project Play.